I want to get into my 7 greatest of all time before I run out of time here. So starting off at number 7, I think you could put this guy a little bit higher. Roberto "The Hands of Stone" Duran. Now, a professional record of 103 fights, 103 wins to 16 defeats and 17 knockouts. You will see me looking down at the phone here because I have to double check the records because I can get them wrong. Duran boxed across 5 different decades. Like it's unbelievable. He started in '69 and finished in the 2000s. It's a joke. I was watching a documentary on Duran the other day because if you follow my thing, you'll see he's one of my favourite fighters. Just such a genius level fighter. People that don't really know the game would just think he's a great aggressive fighter, but so sound defensively, so crafty, so many tricks, absolutely ferocious in his prime. And it's his prime years that, in my opinion, go under the radar. For an entire decade, and it's and people will ask me, why do you rate Duran above Hagler and Hearns and Leonard? Because they all beat him, barring the fact that he did beat a prime Leonard. But it's because of not only because of what he'd done in the 80s, even around those guys, but also because of his prime. In 1971, at super featherweight, he defeated the great Panamanian champion, Ernesto Marcel, world champion, legendary fighter. Duran is just getting started, and he TKO'd him in the 10th round. He's just getting started, and he's beating legendary fighters. The next year, he defeated the International Boxing Hall of Famer, Scotland's great Ken Buchanan, in a very good fight. In somewhat of a controversial manner, but nevertheless, he showed his skill. For 7 years, 6.5, 7 years, Duran absolutely dominated the lightweight division in almost unprecedented form, really. He defeated the likes of Esteban de Jesus. And Esteban de Jesus is a phenomenal fighter. I can never say his name. It's Guts Ishimatsu, great world champion who would go on to win world titles. Just unbelievable fighter. During those years, he was seemingly impossible to beat. De Jesus did beat him, but Duran come back twice. Just a ferocious... I can't explain how good Duran was in his prime. Ferocious, intimidating, like the devil in the ring. So he dominated the lightweight scene, made 12 successful defences of his title, 11 of those by a knockout over a 6.5-year period. To put that into context with Marvin Hagler, who's deemed as one of the greatest fighters of all time and just boxed at middleweight, his only run as champion was 7 years with 12 defences and 11 of those by a knockout. So before Duran was even boxing the likes of Hagler, Leonard, Hearns, he'd already nearly mimicked Hagler's middleweight reign at lightweight. But even before that, in the late 70s, he moved up to welterweight and boxed the great International Boxing Hall of Famer, welterweight champion, Carlos Palomino, who had only just recently lost the title and put on an absolute clinic of inside fighting. If you love your boxing, you love your inside fighting, watch Duran versus Palomino. And then he set up the super fight against Sugar Ray Leonard. Now, going into the super fight against Sugar Ray Leonard, Duran had dominated for the entire decade, had a record of 71-1 with 50-something knockouts, and then went in and gave one of the most legendary performances of all time against a prime Sugar Ray Leonard, and outgunned him. At this stage of his career, he's on top of the world. 72-1, come from complete poverty in Panama, absolutely ruled the division, pound for pound won, already one of the greatest fighters of all time. And he hasn't even had the fights, barring the Leonard fight, that he's most known for. And this gets to him a little bit. He was never the most disciplined. He never really trained on a consistent basis. He blew up. And after that fight, he blew up in weight. He went up to about 190 pounds, partying, knocking out horses. Like, the guy was just crazy. And he was seen as a god in Panama. And his management team signed the fight against Leonard really quickly within 6 months without him knowing. So he has to cut from 190 down to 147. You could just see it in the performance. He's sluggish. Putting the fact that he's against one of the greatest fighters of all time is Sugar Ray Leonard, who's absolutely boxing his ears off. He has the no mass incident. He stops. He quits in the ring. There's no denying that. It happened. The world has seen it, and many people still dig him out for it. So he's currently got a record of 72-2, one of the greatest fighters of all time without a doubt. He could sail off into the sunset. He's had a great career, but no. He goes in against Wilfred Benitez, Kirkland Lang, and he loses again. He's on a terrible run of form. People write him off. He has a couple of wins as well, but just a terrible run of form. And he makes this comeback, and he's not really seen as a big thing, and fights Pepino Cuevas after a little bit of time. Now, Pepino Cuevas is a Hall of Fame welterweight champion who has the world record for the most jaws broken during his reign as champion. This guy, in my opinion, barring Joe Frazier, has the best left hook in boxing history. And Duran goes out. You know, you listen to the commentary. It's on Top Rank. They've uploaded it on YouTube. And he stops him in 4 rounds. Brilliant performance. It starts his initial comeback. He then goes in against the light middleweight champion, Davey Moore. Undefeated. A little bit green, but with hindsight. Didn't have that many fights. But going into that fight, Duran had lost the likes of Kirkland Lang. Great fighters like Wilfred Benitez, but he was deemed a shot. He was given no chance. Oh my God. That fight is one of the most... It was a massacre. Duran absolutely massacred Davey Moore. It's one of my favourite performances of all time. And he wins the light middleweight title around a decade or more just after winning the lightweight title. And then, you know, he's had a nice comeback, nice little run of form. Maybe takes it easy. Goes up to middleweight and steps in with a prime Marvin Hagler. Takes Hagler the full 15 rounds, something no one else was able to do, barring Sugar Ray Leonard. And wins quite a lot of those rounds. And then goes in against Tommy Hearns in his next fight. Similarly goes up in weight, blows back down. And Tommy Hearns was just a nightmare. Just a terrible day for him. The only time he was ever blitzed with one punch in over 120 fights. Or 120 fights. And he's done. Over the next couple of years, he doesn't really have that many great fights, any major fights. And then there's this guy called Iron Barkley, this massive middleweight champion, absolutely demolishing Tommy Hearns. And a 38-year-old former super featherweight Roberto Duran goes in against the younger, much bigger, much stronger middleweight champion Iron Barkley. 38 years old, much smaller, and goes toe-to-toe with him over 12 rounds, drops him, hurts him, wins the middleweight title. For me, that just cements Duran. It's 17 years off the top of my head after he won the lightweight title, 4 divisions above. And it's actually more divisions nowadays if you add all the super and junior divisions in between. And then he boxes for another decade. Boxes the likes of Vinny Paz, Hector Camacho. His last fight in the 2000s was against Hector Camacho. Excellent fighter. One of the greatest resumes ever. As tough as you get. So skillful. Roberto Duran, in my opinion, has a rightful claim for the greatest of all time.